Greetings everyone. This is Ayman Noor, partner in El Tamimi and head of Egypt office. In March 2015, Egypt launched its strategy for sustainable development, Egypt's Vision 2030, one of the long-term sustainability plans which spans over the three dimensions of sustainable development, namely economic, social, and environmental dimensions, and outlines the broader principles which will guide Egypt in pursuing its development goals. In addition, National Climate Change Strategy 2050 focuses on lowering carbon emissions, increasing reliance on clean energy, and enhancing scientific research. Egypt is also coordinating global action on climate adaptation, mitigation, and finance by hosting COP27 in November 2022 as a representative of Africa to advance African priorities and reach concrete actions on global climate change and clean energy transition. Egypt has adopted a range of new sustainable projects and started to adapt its business community to new environmental goals. It seeks to increase the rates of green investments to represent 50% of total government investments by 2024. This will enhance the intervention of private sector and investors in future economic activities. For us, this will have a significant effect on the legal practice in Egypt in the upcoming years. Climate change is at the forefront of most government agendas. In Egypt, there have been a number of government-led initiatives to support the 2030 vision and build a more sustainable future. To get more insights, I am joined by Celine El Khouri. Celine is a Regional Climate and Resilience Senior Officer in the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Celine, I have a few questions for you regarding your work and your expertise. You have been a key figure in designing and driving forward government initiatives to support sustainability and climate change. Tell us where your passion for climate change and working towards a more sustainable future comes from.
We used to spend our summers when I was a child in my mother's village, and it was surrounded by apple trees and a lot of greeneries, and we used to play around with other kids hiding under the trees or even above the trees. So it made me grow in a way to appreciate and love nature. So when I was pursuing my studies in chemistry, I was actually a pre-med student, but in 2015 we had the waste crisis in Lebanon and the streets were filled with dump sites, and I started being curious more about the environmental challenges that we might face, and because I was only seeing the good side of it. So I decided to do my master's in environmental technology to be able to address the different environmental problems that Lebanon and the world is facing. And one of the main global issues that we have to address collectively is climate change. And this is what we are trying to advocate for as IFRC. So Strategy 2030 for IFRC places the climate and environmental crisis as the first strategic priority that we have to address by the movement, as it is impacting most vulnerable communities that don't have the capacities or the resources to address climate change.
In Egypt, there have been a number of initiatives and new laws that have been put in place. Is there one that you feel can have the largest impact?
Egypt may face a lot of challenges and environmental challenges related to climate change and the environment, like drought, sea level rise, lack of diversified resources that are further exacerbated by climate change. But the most important step that the Egyptian government has done related to that is the 2050 Egypt National Climate Change Strategy, as it consolidates all aspects of climate change to be taken as a reference to bridge the gap and lead the way to Egypt's Vision 2030. What's important in the strategy is that it identifies Egyptian citizens as the priority, because addressing climate change impacts would actually improve the quality of life of the people. And this is done in collaboration and with other participation of all sectors of society, including NGOs and civil society. So it is not the sole responsibility of only the public authorities. Local actors should actually align their plans and programs based on this strategy, and it would be better to fulfill it while also avoiding the duplication of error efforts that we usually witness when we work in silos toward the same goal.
From a commercial perspective, how important is the collaboration between government and the private sector?
Collaboration between different stakeholders in general is always leads to more effective and efficient work and implementation. But the collaboration between the public and the private sector is one of the most important collaborations, because in a way it complements the gaps that are usually present from both sides. So the government could make use of the expertise and the work on the ground done by private organizations to update and enhance their visions, their strategies, strategies and goals in a realistic and scientific manner. Private organization could also provide the needed funding for the government or the public authorities to achieve those goals. At the same time, private organizations could showcase different success stories from their work that could positively affect policies and reforms needed in governments and public authorities. From a humanitarian perspective, and specifically IFRC and the national societies, the Red Cross and Red Crescent societies have an auxiliary role with their governments, and ultimately they raise the voice of the communities that sometimes is neglected, especially vulnerable ones. So this auxiliary role should be reflected and supported by laws, by policies and plans, agreements, and that should be done and addressed together with the government.
Egypt is hosting COP27. How can we make sure this opportunity is maximized?
Actually, I believe that Egypt is already maximizing this opportunity, as it is the first COP to have a youth and children pavilion, highlighting the important role of the youth in the fight and the adaptation towards climate change. Youth are feeling the risk and the vulnerabilities created by climate change, and they have the needed power to change, and at the end we consider them agents of change. And the new generation is leaning more towards being green entrepreneurs and innovators, as the needed technology to do that is now actually available.
What legacy would you like to see COP27 leave behind in Egypt?
The fact that COP27 is happening in the Arab region and one of the African countries, one of the most impacted by climate change, is essential to highlight that the most vulnerable countries are the ones suffering the most. And it is those countries that have or are trying to adapt with the least resources available. So we can learn a lot from them, and we should trust their visions and their recommendations.